and happen to be Jewish, rich white European men. And they're propped up by the United States government and imperial system and military system that keeps them in power, and Israel very much serves the U.S. empire. And so the U.S. and Israel work together to displace and oppress the Palestinians in order to build up a military complex in the Middle East that assures U.S. domination. It also gives the U.S. a convenient scapegoat to blame the problems of the Middle East on Israel and say, you know, blame the Jews. Also blame what's happening to the Palestinians on Israel, not look at the billions of dollars the U.S. gives to Israel every year. So that's, in my opinion, the very most simplistic explanation of what's going on. Concretely, we have the entire Palestinian people living under brutal military dictatorship. They deal with violence and harassment and oppression at a daily basis, and in the face of that have maintained a constant resistance movement, that they refuse to just be quiet and let their land be taken. They continue to fight, primarily non-violently. There's overwhelmingly non-violent popular resistance, everything from marches and demonstrations and direct actions to everyday resistance of just trying to continue going to school, trying to continue going to work, raising families, you know, in spite of this constant oppression and domination of the occupation. But there is some armed struggle as well that we hear about, and you know, that which targets civilians is a very small element of Palestinian armed struggle. Most Palestinian armed struggle focuses on their right under international law to resist any armed presence on their land. The Israeli military is a foreign occupying force, and they have the right to resist that force with arms. And so it's really sad to see the very small amount of their resistance with targeted civilians being put up as the only form of resistance that's happening. So we've got groups of very loving, warm, amazing people, largely, both Jewish Israelis and Palestinians are all very loving people. Like everybody I talked to wanted to live in peace, loves their families, just really wants to be in harmony. Really, we've just got a few small actors, primarily the Israeli and U.S. governments, that doesn't have an interest in there being peace. So they continue this occupation, which pits Palestinians and Israelis against each other, and just really destabilizes the entire region, which serves U.S. interests. But everybody else wants peace, and I very much believe that once the U.S. and Israeli governments decide that, or once we force them to realize that they can't continue this apartheid and oppression, that they very much can live in peace together and find a solution that works for everyone.
You're from Austin, Texas, right? And it's like a border state, right? And this whole issue of the immigration thing, and that the whole idea of this wall being built. There's this talk about building a wall that's supposed to prevent, I guess, wetbacks, if we want to call it that, from crossing into our territorial integrity thing. Anyway, so the whole idea of this wall, how do folks in Austin, Austin rocks, man, but Texas has just got such bad rap, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, from somebody from up here, give us an insight and a little bit of what's going on in Texas. Texas
actually reminds me a lot of Palestine, because we've got like the most extreme racist white settlers, you know, and still a whole lot of indigenous people. Most of the indigenous people in Texas are of Mexican descent, which have largely related to the indigenous people of Central and South America. So we have very much a similar struggle of colonization and resistance and racism, and you know, Texas is very familiar. I'm actually originally from Kansas City, Missouri, but living in Austin now, and yeah, the racism is very thick, you know, particularly in the surrounding areas of Austin. You can see the overt racism and the racist policies of the police and the immigration police and the people in general. But in Austin, people are somewhat more progressive, a lot like Olympia, but there's still an incredible amount of racism. It's one of the most segregated cities in the country. The police continually harass and shoot and kill people of color. The city's 25% Mexican, but the Mexicans are all confined into one area on the east side. Their schools are completely deteriorating. They have infrastructure built up to pollute the air and water around the Mexican and black neighborhoods. And it's just the populace of Austin, they're white liberals. They see themselves as progressive, but they also want to have their high standard of living and, you know, have a lot of racist stereotypes and things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done in all of the communities.